We are beautifully, melanated.
Hello and welcome to Beautifully Melanated podcast. I'm your host, Karen.
And I'm one of your hosts, Sarah, and our other co-host, Kay, is not able to make it this week. She's had a very close family bereavement, unfortunately. So for the next few weeks, Kay will not be with us. It'll be myself and Karen, and then Kay will be joining us back when she is able to do so. So tonight, I wanted to introduce a special guest. Rolan is a child and adolescent integrative therapist. Can't speak right tonight. And I went to uni actually with Rolan a very, very long time ago. I was trained to be a counsellor, then Rolan went on and trained to be a therapist. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to get him onto the podcast tonight. Not only is he a therapist, he's also a father. And not only is he a father, he's also a Black therapist. So I wanted to get his kind of spin on things and what it was like for him to be a Black male therapist in our world, basically. So, Rolan, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for accepting me.
So I just wanted to start off and asking you, because actually I don't even know this, even though we went to uni together, or maybe you told me, but I forgot about it. So what is it that got you into wanting to become a therapist in the first place?
Yeah, good question. I didn't have a dream as a young person to become a therapist. I didn't even know much about it. So it just happened kind of organically as I got a bit older. In fact, the first time I realized something was on the cards along those lines was when I was at university, and I was doing my degree in criminology. And I was in the third year, so I was doing my dissertation on New Labour, their relationship with young people. And as a result, I had to interview a couple of yacht teams because I was more focused on policy work at the time. And from the interviews with the yacht workers, it became really apparent that by the time older teens got to the youth offending teams, they were already very traumatized and had experienced too many failures in their life, and by that stage they were quite hardened and their brains had been hardwired already. So it's really hard to have an impact, a positive one with them. It was more like they were just able just to keep them where they were, and so too much damage had been done. So they were always talking about intervention needed to be done earlier, and it got me thinking, it could be good for me to at the time I was thinking about policy work and just to be able to focus on early intervention as opposed to more reactive measures. And it's only after uni, I was working on the London Underground at the time, and a position came up in a primary school to become a learning mentor. And I took the opportunity, and from there, I just really loved the work. I loved being able to work with young people. I loved the energy I got, but I loved being able to just make a difference, noticeably on their faces from the start. It's like they really drank up the opportunity just to work with me sometimes. And I don't know, it could have been that I was fulfilling maybe a father figure role, a big brother role, whatever what we called transference was at the time, but there was a big need for it. And so from there, kept continuing in that role. But at some point, I wanted to just professionalize myself a bit more. I was thinking about maybe traveling abroad and just thinking, I need something a bit more to be able to just to professionalize what I was doing. So that's when I started thinking about educational psychology. It was a bit too long at the time. So I did come up with research, and in the end I thought the psychotherapy route seemed like it would go down well for me, and also the school I was working at the time. So they said that they could help me with that. So that's how I got into it. It wasn't a grand design from early, but as I was working and as my experiences came up, it just kind of started leading me that way. And I do believe that just within myself, I think sometimes your path just becomes clearer as you meet people, as you have experiences, and you become maybe moving towards a version of yourself that kind of fits in more, that makes you a little bit happier. I think it did for me fit in this work, therapy work, with my experiences already, with some of my skill sets already, and with just the fact that I like to be sociable, I like to be helpful, I like being useful, and I like making a difference or helping people. So it just worked out well, and that's how
I remember when we were on our course, I feel like you were one of only, was there maybe two men?
It was two men.
You and Solomon or something, wasn't it?
Sandy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was that for you going into, when you transitioned into a kind of full-time therapist? Was it very woman orientated? Were you one of the only men again, or did you find you were one of many male therapists?
Once I finished so again, I found that I haven't come across many male therapists or even counselors for that matter, and so definitely my experience has been that it's very heavily woman orientated, and then just very heavily non-black or Asian heavy wise as well. So in both senses, I felt like often I was, quite a large minority. And it was obvious to me that that was the case. But as I choose to just generally work with the positives, and I just thought, a lot can come out of this. And in my work so far, it's been really pleasing, my response that schools have had towards me, that the children actually that I work with, or the young people I work with as well, it just seems like it's worked out really well in the end, because there is a need for more representation, and in that sense I feel like I'm fulfilling or helping to fulfill that need for representation, that need for alignment, or to be able just to for young people to be able to just imagine or dream into possibilities for the future that include them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. I mean, do you see many young black males at all? Young black boys, young black men in your practice?
I work in 3 different schools, and I'm currently a freelance psychotherapist. So I'm in 3 different schools, and they're all different in different parts of London, and they do have different compositions. But I do, in all 3 schools, see quite a lot of my cohort are Black and Asian.
Really good.
Yeah, Black and Asian. And so sometimes, more than likely, in my opinion, and from what they say and the feedback they give of me, it seems to help, again, with just a lot of the therapeutic work is based on relationships and just on building a partnership together. And often a lot of the work is done just from the first session of me going in. Not only do they just see how I am and see my background, or what they read of my background, and sometimes it matches with theirs, but just being open, being warm, just being sensitive to them, just not being judgmental, and just giving them the space to kind of work things out and just make readings of maybe their or interpretations of what's going on for them. They just appreciate the efforts just to understand a little bit about what they go through.
Can I ask, please, what are the common difficulties that the young people seem to be experiencing?
Common ones are just fitting into the school communities. So fitting into a school community, being able to take part in within the lessons as well sometimes. So it's just that often they're not able, or then it could be a combination of things happening, but they're not able sometimes to be in the classrooms long enough to then feel like they've got a grasp of what's going on in the lessons, and then also that they feel part of the school community. And often they start feeling very disengaged. They start feeling quite disaffected with their position. And that coupled with just at that age, especially I work with teenagers, so just that coupled with outside pressures, so social pressures as well, to kind of move off into other groups that are interested in other things. School sometimes becomes quite secondary to them. Some of the young people I'm working with, they've either been through large life events, so that's already knocked their confidence and already knocked how they perceive themselves and how they perceive other people will treat them.
Sure.
And then, and on top of that, so now they're looking for recognition or welcoming from other places, and a lot of the
belonging, and
find it very hard to communicate that they really want them there, and that they've got patience for them, and so on, or under nurture, more importantly. So they look for it in other places, and so that, you know, a lot of my difficulties that I see for the young people I work with is just even coming into school, wanting to be there, and imagining that they can be successful there, imagining that there's a real place for them, not just a kind of fantasy place for them. Because they in their worlds, they read that I'm just not wanted here. And so a lot of the behavior is either I'm just going to reject you before you reject me, or I'm just going to be quite avoidant with it. And so sometimes, yeah, they'll get into a situation where they're just, their hopes are just really limited, and their ambitions are limited because they don't believe it can actually happen.
And they don't aspire. Yeah.
So a lot of my work is just helping them to relight that fire in.
To believe in themselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Empowering them to believe that good things can happen to them too.
Yeah, exactly. And feeding back a lot of the goodness I see in them, because sometimes they've forgotten about those things. They're able to be very playful in the space with me. They can capture again some of those things that they used to love. They get quite nostalgic sometimes in there, but all of that has a place in the present as well. So we can relight what the things that they were passionate about before, the things that they used to like about life, and the kind of the what they saw for themselves in the future. We can take some of that energy and bring it into the now, and see if we can somehow get them to just start putting one foot in front of the other again, and just getting back onto track.
It sounds like you do an amazing job, I have to say. It sounds as if you do an absolutely amazing job, and, you know, much needed, as you say. So, yeah.
Unfortunately for me, I actually love doing the work. So it works both ways. Like, I actually like seeing them come in the room, and they can see that. So already...
It's important, because otherwise it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Young people, the connection. I think a lot of the healing is the working relationship, is the connection. If you've got that connection, that's a lot of the work there, right there. If you don't have the connection, how is the work done?
It can't really work. And for a lot of them, what they want more than anything is just to feel belonging and be accepted and feel like they're good enough. So if your face lights up in a way, sometimes not over dramatic, because they also think, right, so you're overdoing it. At the same time, if you could just demonstrate to them that they're important to you, and that you're looking out for them, that's half the battle there in terms of trying to help them along, because they just want to feel that it's important to them. A lot of teenagers think in black and white thinking, and the way they read facial expressions, because their brains are not fully developed, they just have like a good and bad. So if your face maybe looks confused sometimes, or you're uncertain, or another kind of face that's on the edge, they just see it as an angry face. or they see it as a dissatisfied face with them as a person rather than the situation. So straight away that gets a lot of them into a kind of battle mode or in survival mode, where then it's either me or you. And then, you know, once that started, you know, not only are the young people then starting to maybe be more disagreeable or more aggressive, the teachers in turns do it, and it becomes a kind of ongoing cycle. So a lot of my work is sometimes to work with the teachers as well, just to put into place more support for them as well, but help them to have more understanding of what the young person's going. It's not so personal. We have to think about projections and transference as well. And so once you take the personal side out of it, sometimes they're able to be a bit more objective and not take it so personal.
Absolutely. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
That is a really good point, because I've worked in several schools over the years, and I have seen that, you know, where teachers kind of misinterpret what's going on for the young person's defiance. And like you say, it often presents in challenging behavior, doesn't it?
Yes.
And sometimes it becomes a battle between the teacher and the young person. And it can become personal for the teacher because they're thinking, I will make this person listen. I will make them. And actually, I can hear that you're coming in as a kind of advocate for the young person. You're being that intermediate, that kind of voice, aren't you? So that both sides are heard, and maybe teachers do need to have a better understanding of what is going on for the young people in their classes.
I mean, I haven't done the teaching training, but from what I understand, I don't know how much psychological components there are to the course, but even if there was one, it would be quite small compared to what they do have to know on the job. But I think it's important that anybody working with young people, they know about developmental stages, they know about how their minds work, how they're different from us as adults, so that, you know, already you're just more equipped. You're more equipped to go in and meet them, and you're more equipped to be able to just deal with what comes with it, the challenges.
I think you're absolutely right. I did teacher training. And yes, there is some psychology around, you know, development and, you know, understanding young people. Mm-hmm. But actually, I think part of the problem is that teachers have got so much to contend with. So they are so performance driven. It's very sort of driven by grades, isn't it?
It's structured, isn't it?
It's very structured, and it is, you know, Ofsted's looming, and they have targets to meet. It is an incredibly pressured job, and so I think sometimes, you know, they lose sight of actually the needs of young people. The other thing I would say is, in my current role, I work in a secondary school, and the other thing I'm finding is that perhaps I have an understanding of some of the children and young people I work with from a cultural background, where my colleagues perhaps lack that understanding and that kind of, some of the information that they would need to help them in that area. So I find that young people of colour do tend to gravitate towards me. And I also find that when I'm working with teachers and senior leadership members, I try to offer other solutions other than what they would normally go for. So, for example, I had a situation recently where my senior wanted to go to social services because something had come up. It was safeguarding. However, I didn't think social services should be the first port of call. I said, look, let's talk to the families first. Let's have a conversation with mum, and let's see if there's another way, because I do think that there's so much litigation, isn't there, in this country, right? So everybody has to cover their backs. And I do understand that from the point of view of the school. However, I think if you always go down the route of let's call social services first, I think you lose trust with families, right? And so I always try to advocate, talking to families first. Let's see if there's another way that we can, work together around this before we start calling in outside agencies. And that's perhaps something that, they wouldn't have thought of before. Because for them, that would be their first call.
That makes total sense. Makes total sense. And I think, like you said as well, Karen, I think all three of us, I can't speak for Roland, maybe to say, but I find a lot of the black kids, to be real, in the school will come to me, and they will disclose things to me, and then people will be surprised that they've disclosed these things to me, and I'm thinking, why are you surprised?
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no one wants to say the obvious, do they?
Yeah.
So that's what kind of happened. The main thing for me is people are talking. That's what's important.
Yeah.
Whether I'm black, white, blue, green, people are talking.
Definitely.
But I think that's why it's important to have
representations
in school.
You're right.
I think that's the whole point. And that's what I'm saying, that what Roland does is so
and also being a male as well, Roland. I think it's so important for like young black boys. And I was going to ask you, like, what's your views on young male mental health? What's your views on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard from what we know of in the figures and the statistics at the moment for a lot of males in general, in terms of how they cope with stress at this current time. The numbers for suicides within males is a lot higher than in females at the moment. We know for definite that males in particular are struggling, and so a lot of the young black males I come across, they are struggling big time as well, because if you think about it culturally, men have always been told that it's you have to man up, and it's important for you to just get on with it, and that's even something that's even been put a lot of British culture as well, the stiff upper lip and just get on with it and be stoic and so on. But there comes a point where if you don't pay attention to your emotional needs and what you're experiencing, and you cut off from it, then it's only a temporary measure, and it's something that
in the end it's like boom,
back up again. And it will come up unexpectedly, and it will come up really quickly, which will be frightening to the actual person themselves, but also to the people that experience it. And often it will just be a totally unsuitable response at an unsuitable time.
Oh, totally. I have first-hand experience of this in my life, and 100% of the champagne cork. Well, not so much champagne at that point, more like sour beer, just going bang, and then that's it. Life meltdown. And I think it can happen even. I've seen, not just in my experiences, but men in their, I don't know, like late 20s. If they keep suppressing and suppressing and suppressing, you're heading for Breakdownville, aren't you, at that point?
Yeah. So we're trying to teach a lot of the young people, and the males in particular, that not only is it important to open up, but it's just healthy for you, and it will be healthy for your relationships, healthy for your learning, healthy for just your overall development. If you can talk to people about what you're going through, if you can talk about what you need from them, if you can be honest enough about your vulnerabilities. I mean, people see it as weakness, and it's wet, it's moist, it's not cool. But really, it's not cool to lose control and lose options, lose
your life.
Lose your life.
And opportunities as well. So you act out, end up in prison, all this kind of stuff. It all affects you, doesn't it?
Cool. Those things aren't cool. Not having your family not being able to call on you anymore. For help. That's not cool. So I think it's really important that I continue, and people, we all do continue to encourage the males in particular, just to reach out more, to be able to talk about their vulnerabilities and their concerns, their preoccupations. And teach them how to do that. Teach them just to even notice, because sometimes they're not even aware. So it's teaching them to become aware of their moods and how that influences their thoughts, how it manifests in their body and their behavior, just so that they can start becoming their own detectives. They can start working out what their triggers are, what soothes them, what helps them, what motivates them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Will come more control and become a bit more empowerment. But at the moment it's really bad. The numbers are quite shocking, and so it's good in general that people are promoting well-being more often. There's obviously a long way to go, because even though they're promoting it, numbers are still quite high, and obviously we've just come out of the lockdown not too long ago as well, and so that really, put an extra strain on people that were already strained, and they weren't able to do healthy things to look after themselves to relieve that strain. So yeah, I talk to even my friends and family about it, and other young males about it in a way that says, look, it's like with your cars, you need to MOT your cars, you need to MOT your minds as well. So it's important for you to just keep an eye on your general running, keep an eye on how things are working, and just give it a service. So
that's a good idea, actually. That's a really good way of putting it, actually. Giving yourself a service.
Yeah. An MOT.
An MOT.
Yourself.
We all need an MOT.
Yeah,
you can't let the car to run for 10 years with nothing.
You need an MOT once a year, right? MOT once a year.
MOT once a year. Meant to have a service with it. I haven't had a service for 2 years. Need to have one.
Yeah. And it's just general maintenance, isn't it?
Yeah.
General maintenance. Yeah. Exactly. I agree with that.
You can put it down under the banner of self-care, because self-care is about noticing what you need as well, and so it's really important to. Sometimes you can do it on your own with some reflection, with some meditation, which some people are not doing, but you need sometimes an outside person.
You need another, don't you, to witness it,
bounce the ball off, to brainstorm with, just to
definitely. I don't think you can do it on your own. I don't think. I think if you've got a minor, I think you can do it on your own if you. Like if there's a minor issue that you can kind of talk through with friends and family. But if there's a major issue from childhood that's stopping you progressing in life, you have to have some kind of therapeutic intervention.
You'll have a massive blind spot for it, so you just won't see it.
You go through your whole life chugging away.
To bring it to you gently, you'll be so defended against it because you can't accept that weakness, and you've been ignoring it for so long, you actually have forgotten about it, so you won't see it in other people. And the only way, the time you'll deal with it in your mind's way, is by projecting it onto other people and just attacking it in them. But all the while, you're sabotaging your relationships and you're not healing it within yourself.
Right. That's right.
Do you work with families at all? Do you work with...
So I don't work extensively with families. I do have a lot of phone calls and conversations with parents, just to, again, first of all, hear them out and see what are some of the themes coming out from the situations they're talking about, just to help them kind of see what things I think are more important to focus on and what things are probably less helpful to focus on. And so that helps sometimes, but I'm not trained in it, so I don't do it enough, like where I have family or therapeutic sessions. But in the future, it's something I'd like to do more of, run some more workshops with parents, and put more support out there for them to just know a bit more about what's going to be helpful and what isn't so much.
Yeah, I agree.
What's going to improve the relationship and the trust between them, and what isn't. So
they need to know. Yeah. So many parents do not. I'm actually surprised, because I deal with teenagers all day, all night, but all day, every day. My brain is still chucking all day, every day. I'm always surprised when people say they don't know how to talk to teenagers. I'm always surprised by that, because I love talking to teenagers, and I'm surprised that people are scared of teenagers. Like, what?
But I think actually when it's your own teenager, that's what's difficult. So if you're talking to a teenager, which
a generalized,
so we all do that, don't we, in our day to day?
Yeah,
I can see things that the parent can't see. Yeah. Not because they're bad parents, but just because you just need a fresh pair of eyes.
But some people struggle with actually speaking to teenagers as such.
But I can, because the thing is, I have a teenage daughter. Mm-hmm. I can say this, Sarah.
My daughter's not a teenager.
Your daughter's not a teenager, and I can tell you that my work is quite different to being a parent myself, because you are so involved emotionally in your own children's lives, and also being reflective as a parent and looking at what you have done, what you haven't done. It's telling somebody else is one thing. You practicing that yourself is quite
hard.
Else.
It is hard.
So I can honestly tell you that having currently still have one teenage daughter, It is different. And it's not that I struggle to communicate with my daughter. It's just that when problems arise, I'm having to really be quite creative in the way that I tackle those issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so,
you have to, don't you, with teenagers?
And when I talk to parents, I try, like you, to bring a lot more of my work to parents, because what I'm finding is that parents are struggling to parent.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, right. So they're struggling. They don't quite know how to. They want to set boundaries, right? For example.
Yeah, they do, yeah. And
sometimes when they set boundaries, they're met with a lot of backlash. They're met with, and that's hard to deal with. Yeah. And I think, often I say to parents, I say, look, I am a parent, and that's my kind of way. And I say, look, my daughter even came to this school. I understand your struggle. I hear, what you're going through. Yeah. But no, I do get that. I do understand why parents find it really difficult to talk to their teens. Definitely.
Yeah. I can't. My daughter is only 9, so I can't talk when it comes to me parenting a teenager at the moment. But I do come across people who say if they see like a group of teenagers just sitting there, they'll cross the road because they feel fear of teenagers. Now, I've never felt fear as such of a teenager.
I think they can be quite. I think they can be quite erratic. Do you know what I mean? I think.
Yeah. I think they're like that. If you think they're going to be like that, they will. That's why I look at, like, you think they're going to do something, they're about to do it. You think, oh God, and they did it.
I don't know, because even when I walk down the high street, I mean, I don't have a fear of teenagers.
No, not me.
But I can understand that, because sometimes they can be quite unpredictable, right? So you can walk down the road or whatever, and there's a group of young people outside McDonald's. I don't know. Okay, some might have hoods up, or they might not have hoods. I'm not trying to generalize, but you know what I mean. I can understand why some people wouldn't like to be in the presence of, because it's quite. They can be quite. They're quite insular, aren't they? Yeah, they can be quite insular. They sort of have their own. It's like listening to my daughter on her phone, talking to her friends, or whatever they do. I feel so removed from that, because I wasn't brought up in that culture where we didn't have memes and TikTok and whatever it is that they, you've got all this to come, my love.
It'll be different still, different again, won't it?
But do you know what I mean? So I understand that parents, or just, lots of adults, if you're not used to working with that age group, young people, I can hear how that could be quite a challenge for them, and I do get that.
Yeah. No, I think that's quite right. I mean, teenagers already, they're full of insecurities at that age, because they're still trying to work out so much, and they're very confused about things. And so, again, a lot of my work is dealing with projections. But normally, some people, if you're taking things personally, it can be quite triggering to be around a large group of teenagers, because if people start feeling unsure of themselves, what they're really doing is holding a lot of the insecurities that's already within the teenagers, and it's being projected onto them. So you've got to be aware of what's yours, what's theirs, and what it's like to be a teenager, or try and remember it again, because it's really hard for us, even though we say, we was there. But,
That's true, though. Parents don't. They're just like, they have no... I remember what it's like being 15. I remember exactly what I was doing at 15. I remember what it was like being 18. I remember what it's like being in my early 20s. Then I seemed to just skip it until I got to 30. Then I remember having my daughter and that. But Roland, what's some advice that you give to parents that are struggling to communicate with their sons and daughters, that they're very shut down? What do you say to them?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, and it's similar to the therapy work as well, is just, again, you're dealing with an age group that can sometimes, whether they sometimes they're not even conscious of it, but they can be quite insular, like you said earlier. They can be quite morose. They can really go into themselves, and it's really hard to feel useful, and it's really hard to know what to do with the situations, because you're receiving a lot of rejection sometimes. No matter what you do, it seems to be wrong and so on. So what that's telling us normally for people is, okay, I'll back up, I'll leave them to it. Or actually, I'm going to be really forceful and make sure they hear me, and I'm going to get what I need to do still. And so sometimes both of those ways of dealing with it aren't so helpful, because it's an emotional response to what they're dealing with. But ultimately, what a lot of these young people are really communicating is that they're pretty anxious, they're pretty unsure, they're pretty confused, they're not sure what to do with it. And we're left feeling that way because, again, we're picking up a lot of the unconscious communication. And so a lot of the time it's about just noticing what could be going on, because once you notice what could be going on, then we're taking some of the energy out of it, some of the emotion out of it, and we're able to just be a bit more present. And often a lot of the young people just want us to be present around them. We don't even have to sometimes fix it. Sometimes it's just about being there with them during the process, during the current experience, during whatever's bothering them. They just want to know that at least mum or dad or uncle or whoever it is, that person is close by enough to be able to catch me if I fall. So a lot of the time it's just about being present and communicating that you're present. It's just really helpful in itself.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, it's one that can be often overlooked because it sounds, hang on, that's too basic. I'm thinking about, what can I do? What can I do? It's like sometimes just being there is enough.
And
that you're there.
I think the reason why that resonated with me so much is because actually I find that lots of children go home to families where perhaps mum and dad aren't present.
Yeah.
They're busy working, they're not there, they're physically not in the house for a start. And even when they are physically in the house, they're doing something else. And I find that actually time, it's such an amazing commodity. Giving really your child time, we overlook that so much. But actually, like you say, just being present and giving that child your time, not on the phone, you're not cooking, but you're just present. You're giving them.
Maybe you're doing something together. Maybe you're
100%.
In the same area. That alone can just reap dividends, because
absolutely,
again, it's what it's communicating to them is that I'm important.
Exactly, 100%.
And they got their eye on me. They're with me on this.
Yeah.
I think sometimes trying to fix it by helicopter parenting or just pulling back and leaving them to it, we're missing the communication. It's just sometimes naming what they're possibly going through, naming what they're possibly thinking, naming what they're possibly feeling. Again, it might not even be right, but they see that we're trying to get it and that we're trying to tune into them. So there's that. A lot of the interpersonal kind of psychology me and Sarah would have studied, but just right brain to right brain. It's just actually sometimes, again, it's not through direct verbal communication, but just tuning into somebody's emotional state is very soothing. It's very regulating. Absolutely. So again, if they are really stressed, if they're feeling like to the point where maybe parents are worried about self-harm or suicide or serious things like that, just trying to regulate ourselves so we're not putting more panic or anxiety onto them and showing that we can't handle the situation, because that's what it's communicating to them. So being really calm ourselves, being regulated, and just trying to tune into their world and trying to see what they're going through, that can be really helpful.
I think it's important also, because when sometimes when you'll sit with someone and they'll have been going through hell and back, and you'll just sit with them for that session and you'll just talk to them. And sometimes you have parents saying they were like a different person when they came out. Well, I didn't even get to doing any of the counselling yet.
Just time.
But it's just, all I did was just ask them how they're doing.
Yeah.
And go with that, and just talk to them about them. Let them talk about them.
Yeah. And
let just the focus be on them.
And you're not trying to rush them anywhere.
Exactly.
You're there for their pace. You're there to go it in their way. And you're not taking over it, because they have to learn to overcome whatever the anxiety was, whatever the situation was. I mean, it shouldn't be big enough to just form a complete rupture, but it shouldn't, obviously, they just be left to it. We have to kind of gauge it as parents, like, when have I got to come in and kind of spot you a bit, help you out there a bit. So there is that. I think just encouraging things to do that are healthy together sometimes, like simple things like going for a walk somewhere natural, going on a little trip, just eating together.
That's a really good point. So many families don't eat together.
They don't,
because again, it's encouraging health, it's encouraging a routine, it's encouraging self-care, but also I'm saying I can even do it with you. So you're important. Again, going back to that thing, they're important, because a lot of the time, a lot of the children I work with, underneath it all, there's a crying out need for just more
attention.
Yeah. No, it's really, they need it.
Yeah.
They need central focus.
Thinking that, you know what I'm currently doing isn't enough, so I've got to do something more extreme to get attention, or to get nurture, or to get something else. And often that thing that they're doing, it makes it even worse for them. Yeah. And then they do even more of it, and it makes it even worse. And so they start having...
Because as we know, children and young people want attention, and they'll get it any way they can. So if the negative that they're doing brings attention, they'll do more of that, because that's the thing that...
Everybody crying out for recognition.
Yeah, 100%.
Everyone is. Everyone needs good, focused attention, healthy attention.
Yeah.
But listen, Roland, we need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. Really, really appreciate your time and your amazing advice for parents. And I think it will help people understand a lot more about our young people as well. Karen, did you want to ask any more questions?
It was just lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Keep doing what you're doing. You're obviously doing an amazing job.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. We are in contact in the usual places. Instagram at Beautifully Melanated Podcast, and at beautifullymelanatedpodcast@gmail.com. I threw an app first there, but you know the
Can I also say that I do have a social online presence as well? I haven't been using it much lately. But
go on, give it a shout out.
Yeah, it's Mr_G Therapy. It's on Instagram.
We'll put it in the show notes as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We are beautifully.